U.S. principal at Stanton Elementary School. Come on up.
Stanton Elementary. I've heard so many wonderful things about the school. I know that it has just great longevity of academic achievement and wonderful student support and relationships. So I look forward to continuing to build upon that and being an exciting elementary principal for our littles. And it is my privilege to serve in the Glendora Unified School District. So thank you.
I'd like to invite you all welcome to leave. You can, we'll see you soon. We'll get you soon. Thank you so much.
Bye. Take care.
Okay, we're moving on now in the amended agenda order to the superintendent's report. Dr. DeLeon, please.
And give you some information on how staffing works here in the district as my superintendent's report. So I'm going to relinquish my time to you, Dr. DeGraff.
Careful what you wish for. I'll do my best. I'll do my best. Thank you so much, Dr. DeLeon, our superintendent, distinguished members of the board, cabinet, distinguished guests. A few weeks back, we gave an overall detailed report in regards to staffing and how things were looking and some possibilities. We wanted to share more information and a little bit more about the process since that time. We've really had a decade of decline, unfortunately, in Glendora Unified. It's proceeded from 2010 to the current state that we're in. And we talked about our residential decline first. Nearly 80% of the homes in Glendora do not have a school-age child in them. So that's a great effect on our district. And although over many of those years, 2010 to 2015 specifically, we were able to keep ourselves afloat with our district of choice enrollment and obtaining students from nearby districts that wanted to come to the Glendora Unified School Districts, many of which still are maintaining their attendance with us. But that has subsided over time, and our residential decline has continued. So our under-enrollment has been exacerbated. It's been seen in the elementary levels, in elementary grades in all of our elementary schools, and has reached full effect at the middle schools. It's really started at 6th and 7th, previously a little bit these past couple years, and now we'll see it 6th, 7th, and 8th grade levels at the middle school. Each year there seems to be a school or two that's a pressure point. I often use that phrase with our principals, or an action spot for staffing, and sometimes it's positively until very recent times, right? And so attrition can help to a point, especially when it comes to our crux, and then we've had a pandemic of the past 2 years and many different factors that are at play. We know some of our neighbors, Azusa Unified being specific. You might have read about them in the news and having to close certain schools and looking at drastic, draconian options that we don't want to look at. We've been there, and I've been there, and that's not a fun place to be. And so we're working very hard to avoid that. Azusa had enrollment double ours probably 10 to 15 years ago. They're nearly the same enrollment as us now. So that's the drastic effect. When I was the principal at Goddard, there was a day where we had 1,100 students. Next year, they're projected to have 700 students. That's a decrease of 400. That is the size of one of our elementary schools, actually more than one of our elementary schools. So it's a significant reduction in effect, and it affects the master schedule. It tightens things up. We have to look at class sizes. We have to look at things to see that they're maximized to their greatest potential, meaning interventions that might have been 5 or 10 may need to be 15 or 20. As far as in a class, things like that. So we have to look at those types of things. Second slide, please. Thank you. In regards to our transfers, and we have transfers each and every year. We have transfers that are voluntary each and every year, and we have transfers that are involuntary. each and every year. It's a contractual process. It's something we follow through our bargaining unit contract, and we follow that to the T. It involves permanent staff. It does not involve temporary staff or substitutes, anything like that. This is a permanent staff process. So we ask for volunteers first. Many times we have enough volunteers, sometimes in certain years, and when we have those pressure points, like this year, we don't have enough volunteers, or we don't have enough substitute staff or temporary staff that may assist in some of these pressure points. So then we have to look at some involuntary aspects. That's always second. But usually it's 4 to 5, maybe 6 or 7 this year, that staff that are involved annually as far as voluntary and involuntary transfers. And the arrows are really descriptive of what is happening this year currently. We have people going in every which direction, from middle school to elementary, from middle school to other middle school, from middle school to high school, all those different directions and in between. We have staff that is being shared at different sites, which happens many times. So all levels are impacted, not just one. We then give our teachers their tentative assignments based upon what we know in the facts that we have in our hands today. If they change, then we move swiftly and adeptly and nimbly to change. Next slide, please. Our temporary staff are very important as well, and I have to pay special respect to them. They persevered just like all other staff during the pandemic. And knowing that they're not a permanent staff member or guaranteed a position or a job at the end of the year is a difficult position to be in. Some years we are able to know very quickly that we can have them return in their capacity. Other years it goes into the summer, in the month of June or the end of the month of June and July, and there have been years where we haven't been able to return some of our temporary staff until right before school starts, or in some years, at all. Yeah, after or at all. So they are clearly aware of the process and why they're deemed temporary and the processes we go through during the year to make them aware of that. Permanent staff, we have contractual processes that we have to follow as well, and we have to make sure they are initially placed. They have a place to be and a spot to go. We have to look at all of our programs and ensure those people that are in programs that may be in decline or no longer functioning at the same level they once were, that they have a spot to go. Then we re-secure, again, our temporary staff as enrollment is in hand, that we have secured it in hand, and then we know for sure that it is happening. We closely monitor each step of the way from the day before school's out, and then, of course, in these coming weeks of June, July, and August. But we try to make those decisions as quickly and as efficiently as we possibly can. So that's a little bit of an update in the process and where we are with staffing and enrollment and our types of staff that we hire here in Glendora Unified. Any questions?
I do have one quick question.
Yeah.
I have received a couple of emails, and so I wanted to, for the benefit of everybody listening, talking about that process that you mentioned as far as our permanent staff and the transfers are concerned. There were 2 things that you mentioned. You did a presentation on this, I think, 3 board meetings ago.
Yeah.
And you talked about just seniority at sites and something that maybe people don't quite understand about are people with single subject credentials versus multi-subject credentials,
yeah.
and how that factors into this matrix that the
Sure.
Glendora Teachers Association helps
Sure.
figure out.
Sure, when we're looking at departments, for example, English, social science, history, science, we look at those single subject credentials if people are the holders of those. If they're multiple subject, they can teach at an elementary level or at the core level at the lower, usually the lower levels, 6th or 7th grade at the middle school. But single subject primarily are single subject department type of credentials held at most middle schools and, of course, all high schools. That's how that works.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that, what you said in the very beginning, our declining enrollment that we've seen residentially for over 10 years now.
Yes.
That I think something like over 70% of public school districts in California are currently in declining enrollment. And just point out, I appreciate your efforts, Dr. DeGrazia, on right-sizing the district and making sure difficult decisions that we have to make now prevent us from making far more drastic and negatively impactful decisions in the future. And neighboring districts, next door, Azusa Unified is preparing to close something like 8 schools over the next couple school years.
Yes.
And they closed 2 elementary schools just a few years ago.
Yes.
Because they had too many classrooms open for the number of students. Baldwin Park Unified closing an elementary school this year, and talking about more. Duarte's closing schools as well, Covina Valley. So we're not in that position, and we're not forecasted to be in that position, very fortunately, but it takes very difficult decisions like this every year, staying on top of it. So just thank you for doing that, because it does help prevent, school closures, which no one ever wants to deal with.
Thank you. And the other
Or
thing,
layoffs.
yeah, or layoffs for sure. The other thing to note is it's a statewide issue. It's not a Glendora, it's not a San Gabriel Valley issue. This is a statewide issue. Over 200,000 students are in decline just this year. It's a steady decline statewide. There would be very few school districts, maybe some east of us, but well east of us, that are increasing in enrollment. But overall, it's a major issue statewide.
Dr. DeGrazia, I have a couple
Yes,
questions for
sure.
you. Do we ever have teachers from sites that run clubs at other sites, or do we have coaches that are in other districts, work for other districts that remain our coaches?
Yes, that is very possible, and we have had that occur in our district many times over the years. There are many instances of that occurring, and they've done it well.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I'm going to give a very brief, I'm looking forward to, like I said, I understand there are quite a few students that are here to speak with us tonight. And I just want to let them all know that your comment will be limited to 3 minutes. There's going to be a clock above Mrs. Cornelius's head over here under this TV that will be counting down the time that you have. And that we ask that everyone, both speaking and in audience, be kind and professional as people make their comments. So what I'll do is I will call up the first person and who's coming next, and I'll just do that subsequently so that we can keep things moving. So the first person that's going to speak this evening is Liliana Lusk, and Ellie Stewart will be next. So Liliana first, and then Ellie will be right behind her.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Liliana Lusk, an upcoming freshman at the Glendora Unified School District. I'm here, along with many others, to address the topic of relocating teachers in our school district. Our school district is amazing and has opened up many opportunities for me and my peers to shine. I am saddened by the thought of our current and future students in our community who will not get the same opportunities that I have greatly benefited from throughout my middle school years. Middle school is a rough time, and we all experience many changes. Through this time, we need a different type of support that only a few teachers can provide. My concern is that the school board has moved many of the teachers that have left a permanent mark on students who need it. I am sure that you can remember that one teacher that made that mark on you. Maybe you were going through a rough time in your teenage years. Maybe you didn't struggle like that, but maybe that was just a teacher that made you look forward to that class. I'm positive that moving teachers such as Mr. Sabota, Mr. Crook, and Mrs. Martinez will be a disservice to the future students in our school district. For example, Mr. Crook has dedicated many years of his time to make sure that our English class at Goddard has come alive, specifically written around the 7th grade curriculum. Mr. Sabota has taught me many other life lessons that I can use today. Without using what he has taught me, I would not have the confidence to talk in front of all of you today. Mrs. Martinez is an amazing math teacher and truly makes an impact with her modern way of teaching. This act that the board is trying to pass is not only hurting the students and the teachers, but it was also hurting those who are getting replaced. I am respectfully standing up here today to ask the school district and board members to consider the impact that moving these teachers will have on our future middle school students and reconsider your position on this. Thank you for your time.
After Ellie Stewart will be Alexis Svoboda.
Good evening. My name is Ellie Stewart, and I am here as a student at Glendora Unified School District. I have completed my 8th grade year at Goddard and will be a freshman at GHS in the fall. I came here today to express my feelings to all of you about the relocation of the 3 Goddard teachers, Mrs. Kristen Martinez, Mr. Jacob Crook, and Mr. Kyle Sabota. Mrs. Martinez has been at Goddard for 6 years and is the math department chair. Mr. Crook has been there for 11 years and is the English department chair. And lastly, Mr. Sabota has been at Goddard for around 8 years and is the elective department chair. Together, they have 25 years of teaching experience at Goddard. That is a lot of middle school lives they have impacted. These teachers are the key to our success at Goddard. All of these people have made such a difference in the students that they teach. Mrs. Martinez is a loving teacher who will bring a smile to anyone's day. She puts her students in front of anything and is more than just a math teacher. Mr. Crook is the most interactive English teacher I've ever met. He makes everything so much fun and will never stop trying to make his students love the subject as much as he does. I would know this since I was in his 7th grade English class last year. He managed to make it fun even on Zoom. Then there's Mr. Sabota. He teaches the tech electives at Goddard, the video or morning announcement class, and ASB. I have been in Mr. Sabota's ASB class for the last 2 years, and it has been the best thing that has ever happened to me. Not only was ASB in general an amazing class, but all classes start with a teacher. Mr. Sabota is the best ASB teacher that Goddard will ever have. He will go to bat for any one of his students. He will always be there for his students and help them thrive in his class. Not only does he help us create the amazing dances and spirit days to make the tight community that you call Goddard, but he also personally DJs our events. On the last day of school, most of the ASB class started crying because we knew that no teacher would ever be able to fully fulfill his shoes. Goddard will never be the same without these amazing teachers. These people have made such a difference to me and the other lives around me. They will never be able to touch any more middle school lives like mine. Thank you, and have a good evening.
We'll now hear from Alexa and then Dom Dunn.
Hello, my name is Alexa. I first and foremost want to say thank you for always trying to do what's best for our students. I've come to communicate the doubts of my peers as well as express my own thoughts of the decision of moving Mr. Sabota out of the ASB advisor position. I attended Goddard Middle School, and now I'm entering my senior year at Glendora High School. I've also been in ISB for a total of 5 years and will be the ASB president next year. I'm here to speak up for what I know is best for Goddard Middle School as a student who has experienced his leadership class and his impact on others. I can confidently say his passion for building leaders and planning events has worked hard. His passion for building leaders and planning events, he has worked hard as transforming the school's atmosphere at Goddard and unique ability to connect to the middle schoolers, which allows him to put on memorable events for the students. The effort and time he puts into planning events has shown his commitment towards bettering the schools. He takes time during his summer, his personal vacation time, to train students on how to implement the skills they're being taught in their own school community. He has shown that he is willing to sacrifice his time and energy to do what's best for these kids. Losing him means you'll be losing one of the best in the state of California. He has been on the board for California Association of Directors of Activities for 10 years. Cutting staff like this will have a lasting impact on Goddard Titans. His special gifts have impacted hundreds of students and created many leaders. You're taking a program that has been a lifeline for many kids at Goddard, and there has been an overwhelming amount of students who have come back to thank him over the years for mentoring and guiding them through their key developmental years. There is no teacher who is better qualified and experienced than he is. Keeping Mr. Svoboda as your Goddard ASB advisor, you can be promised consistency and dedication. Do we want Glendora schools to be the best, or are we going to settle for average? I believe that keeping him as an ASB teacher at Goddard will benefit our students now and in the future. Thank you so much for your time and support to our students.
We're going to have Dom Dunn, and then Kylie Dunn is on deck.
Hi, my name is Dominic Dunn, and I just finished 7th grade at Goddard Middle School. I had Miss Martinez as my math teacher, Mr. Crook for English, Mr. Svoboda for ASB, and Mr. Perry was my 7th grade boys basketball coach this past year. I was also gonna TA for Mr. Perry next year. I already signed up. These 4 teachers, along with the 2 other I had, helped make this a really great year. Next year in 8th grade, I'm really looking forward to being in ASB again. I'm here tonight to ask you to really work hard to figure out how to keep these teachers at Goddard next year. Mr. Svoboda's ASB class. This year in ASB, it might have been the most fun but also most productive class that I have ever had. At the beginning of the year, I only had 1 or 2 real friends in the class, but by the end of the year, I hung out with more than half the class every day, either at lunch, PE, or just seeing them in passing period. Mr. Svoboda was the main person that created the environment of getting people to know each other by creating countless games to get people closer to each other. The ASB director, Mr. Svoboda, motivates his students every day to be the best version of themselves. Also, Mr. Svoboda is one of the main reasons that so many people sign up for ASB, because they know that it will be a fun but also productive class. One of the main reasons Goddard is well liked is because of all the great teachers, and Mr. Svoboda is definitely one of those. Mr. Crook's English class. Mr. Crook's effort that he puts towards his students is the most impressive thing I've ever seen. For example, one time we made a short movie trailer for a script that we wrote. After we finished one day, we walked into class and it was a full award ceremony. We called the Bobbies. Mr. Crook spent 32 straight hours setting it up without sleeping once. He rented a full tuxedo, and it might have been the coolest experience I've ever had in school. Every single assignment we ever did always had one small special twist to make it fun. Miss Martinez's math class. Miss Martinez always found a way to make me and many others want to work hard in math. We always had so much fun when we got through everything we needed with time to spare. Every day she had a quick and fun way of getting our brains awake before we got into math. She had a special way of teaching us an easy way for almost every math problem we did. Lots of people, including myself, look forward to her class even if they don't enjoy math as much as others. Mr. Perry. I was lucky enough to have Mr. Perry as my basketball coach for the 7th grade season. Every single day, before, during, and after the season, he took time out of his day to talk to me about lots of different things, like sports, for an example. Mr. Perry was so amazing that as soon as I was allowed to sign up to be a TA, I did for him, and I really hope that I'll have an opportunity to do that. It's been really cool having such amazing teachers, and especially having 3 male teachers that I could talk and relate to about whatever I needed to. I really hope that I'll be able to see all of the teachers that I mentioned today again next year, because they really make my day. Also, so many different kids could benefit from smaller classes. Thank you.
We're going to hear from Kylie Dunn now, and then Todd DeLeo after.
Hi, my name is Kylie Dunn, and I'm a proud 2021 graduate of Glendora High School, as well as a 2017 graduate of Goddard Middle School. I want to start off by being honest and admitting that I don't know much about teachers' unions or years of seniority, and I certainly am not an expert on budgets or money in reserves. What I do know is that what makes a school special are the people within it. And when we start using terms like least senior or increasing money in reserves to make decisions which remove those very people who make a school special, we cannot say we are doing what is best for students in our community. Throughout my first year of college, I reflected on and used the lessons I learned in my 13 years of Glendora schools almost daily. Although I learned so much academically from all my teachers, the lessons that really stuck with me are those taught by teachers who go above and beyond for their students and teach life lessons, rather than just what is in their lesson plan. As my brother Dominic said, Mr. Crook is a perfect example of a teacher who truly loves teaching and cares about his students as people. I'm thankful to have had his class, which created the foundation for me to move into pre-AP and then 4 years of honors in AP English in high school. Although I did not get the chance to learn from Ms. Martinez and Mr. Perry, it makes my heart happy to hear Dominic come home excited about learning, and those are two names he mentions almost daily. Mr. Sabota was one of the most influential teachers in my preteen and teenage years and had a huge part of forming me into the student and leader that I am today. As any educator who has ever worked with me can attest to, I'm almost always the loudest person in the room, and my personality is usually too big for the situation. While I've had so many amazing teachers who are incredibly patient and loving towards me, Mr. Sabota's ASB class was the first time my huge personality ever found a home at school. Mr. Sabota has a special gift for raising middle schoolers up, teaching them how to be leaders, and challenging them to do more and take on more responsibility than they ever thought possible. This gift is so rare, and it is a disgrace that it's being overlooked. When I didn't make ASB my freshman year at Glendora, Mr. Sabota was one of the first people I turned to for guidance. He invited me to help with the new Goddard ASB's class summer workdays, where we talked about resilience and how to keep going when things don't make sense. Although I was no longer his student, he continued to model for me and teach me how to be a leader. And I'm so proud to say that I made ASB my sophomore year, continued through junior year, and went on to serve as on the ASB executive board my senior year, as well as on the Superintendent Student Advisory Committee with Dr. De Leon, using the skills and foundation that I had built in Mr. Sabota's middle school ASB class. I was recently selected to represent Texas Christian University next year as a chancellor's host. I'm one of only 25 TCU students to have the opportunity to serve as student ambassador for the chancellor, and I would not be able to do that without Mr. Sabota. Although I'm sure they are exceedingly capable, moving these teachers to schools where their hearts don't lie and their talents don't shine is doing a disservice to all the students who deserve a chance to learn from them and carry the lessons they teach with them for their whole lives. So I urge you to think of the students before the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. And next we've got Todd, I'm sorry if you're saying the DeLeo? DeLeo, beg your pardon.
My daughter goes to Glendora High School. I brought my neighbors too. Their kids go there also. And the main concern of ours is school security and a perimeter fence around the high school especially. And I don't know what's in the budget for the Lcap this year, but I wanted to see the Lcap from last year and what it is this year, and how much money is allotted in the budget for security, especially a fence, a physical fence as a first line of defense around the high school. I build high schools, I build schools for a living, and every school that I've been to and built has a fence around their campus, but Glendora does not. And I've asked a few times for it, and I've got emails back saying about mental health awareness and all this other stuff. But the most important thing is the physical barrier. We need that first line of defense. So what is the plan for a fence for Glendora High School for this coming year?
We can't address that.
I can help.
Mr. DeLeo, I would be more than happy after public comment if you would like to meet my assistant Sue, Ms. Fakar, outside, and she'll be more than happy to have that conversation with you, because we're not allowed to actually interact from the dais.
And then will you be reviewing the LCAP? And then there's a line item for security? Because when I called LACO, they said every school district has you have local authority over your own budget. So it's up to you guys to be able to put the money in, allot the money for security. And fencing around the campuses, I'm estimating Glendora High School is probably a $1.2 million for fencing. So it would have to be at least $1.2 million in security, I would think. So, okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, that's all we have for public comment this evening. We're now going to move on to our staff presentations and information. And we'll begin with the Local Control Accountability Plan. Dr. Kelson.
Before I begin, someone left some glasses here. Or were they one of the, or like, okay, whatever.
Maybe those are just the readers, like the group readers, if anybody needs a little help. No, I'm just kidding. I have no idea.
Could be that. Well, good evening. This trustees, Dr. DeLeon, fellow cabinet members, and community. Thank you for coming out this evening and for this portion of the board meeting, for being willing to learn a little more about the local control and accountability plan. First, it's important to touch on the district's vision, and that is that every child will have a powerful future, and that we are able to ensure that all of the actions and services that we provide, all of the funding that is allocated, and that this plan, which is really showing our accountability to meeting some state priorities and to ensuring that we have done so, is looped right back to the district's vision. So what is the LCAP? The LCAP is, the LCAP is a 3-year plan. We are completing the end of the first year. It focuses on meeting local needs within state priorities, and I would add within all state laws and also board policy. We must engage community members in the process, and I'll be talking with you a little bit more about how we continue to do that. And as I mentioned previously, that we are accountable to ensuring that the funds are tied to pupil outcomes. So the LCAP must be written to 8, what used to be 8 and is now 10 state priorities. I have a feeling that the clicker battery has failed me and that someone is trying really kindly to cover by clicking back there. Thank you. So those are the 10 state priorities in California. The first 8 have been in place since at least the inception of the LCAP. And a couple of years ago, the state added 2 priorities. They are numbers 9 and 10. To focus on students who have been expelled, which, by the way, does not deny a student's right to education. It just removes them from a particular district for a semester +1. And it also added, the state also added priority 10, which is providing extra service to students in the foster system. So we have gained a tremendous amount of impact or of input to, in the development of the local control and accountability plan, both in this new cycle and in previous cycles. We must do that in order to create actions and services that are tied to district goals. How have we done that, and who has responded? So we have sent student and district/community engagement surveys. We've sent those to every student, every family, to 10,000 subscribers to the Chamber of Commerce's mailing list, and we've posted the survey for adults on the district webpage. We've received feedback in person from teams from all of the district schools that included representatives from parent groups, staff, students, and then the sites got to choose one bonus member from whatever group they would have liked. They are asked to see to it whenever possible that the students who are invited or the parents who are there come from one of 3 unduplicated pupil groups. Those are students who are English learners, students who are foster, and students living below the federal poverty line, because there are extra accountabilities tied to serving those groups as a part of the law and the guidelines in the 8 state priorities mentioned previously. We're also required to do a number of consultations, going above and beyond, if you will, to engage with specific groups. Those consultations were held with the District English Learner Advisory Council, or DLAC, with the Special Education Local Planning Area, or SELPA, with employee group leadership from the Glendora Teachers Association and the Classified School Employees Association local chapter. In addition to that feedback, as part of the survey, we also offered a phone call from any district administrator at a responding adult's request. As of yesterday, I have reached out to each of those people who asked for contact to offer to connect them with the right person, and one so far has responded. So lots and lots of ways to gain input from people in the community. You may be wondering what our students and adult participants had to say. So this year we had 2,996 students respond. That is an increase of about 2,000 students from the previous year when we capped out at just below 1,000 responses. Our principals at all levels have been instrumental in increasing the student responses, and I am grateful to them on behalf of our community for ensuring that this was a priority for them. Students have reported 5 clear strengths, positive things. Number 1, that they have friends at school. Number 2, that they get to use technology to help them learn, that they have access to books and the tools they need to learn, that their teachers are using technology, and that they have help such as tutoring or access to a counselor or student support specialist to help them get to the next grade or course. One observation here, we had quite a high response rate, very positive in terms of the use of technology last year. And because we were doing quite a bit of distance learning, I anticipated that these numbers might go down. However, they haven't. Our students are still seeing tools for innovative learning in the classrooms, which is wonderful. Next, students gave us some areas that we need to work on as well. They are asking for more help meeting their socio-emotional needs. And even though we have outstanding numbers of contacts with counselors, with our student support specialists, lots of opportunities for kids to access programs, I do believe that our students are seeing needs amongst their classmates as part of just the reality of the world we're living in right now. They have challenged us to spend more energy ensuring that our schools are clean, encouraging them to attend school, which is interesting. Also, post-pandemic, we're, most of us, so glad to see each other back in person, enjoying being at school. And that's an item that touches on school climate. That's a hard one to define in the minds of an average 10 or 14-year-old, right? What does it really mean to have fun while doing one's job, which is going to school at this age? And number 5, continue to grow in welcoming our families at schools. So those are the areas of growth that our nearly 3,000 students have given us. We received similar feedback on the items in the district and community engagement survey. We had 279 people respond to that. And we have also received clear strengths. Here's a contradiction. The top strength from our adult survey participants is, well, it's coming, the contradiction's coming, is that our schools are safe. Most of the surveys, by the way, closed before the events of the last 3 or 4 weeks. Sometimes we'll see in Lcap surveys where the timing of events around us in the world can skew those perceptions. That is a wonderful compliment to Glendora Unified, nonetheless. Number 2, preparing students to complete high school graduation requirements was tied with the teaching of responsibility and other positive behaviors. Number 3, which was really the 4th highest, is students' access to coursework that will prepare them for a thriving adult life. And number 4, that we are fostering engagement with school and positive behavior. That's a contradiction, kind of, right? The students said, make sure I want to come to school and make sure that it's fun for me. The adults are saying that's a clear strength. So we'll dig in to that as we go forward into the next planning for the next school year. The adult participants also gave us some areas to grow on, and because it's such a small response rate by comparison, the 5th item was way far down in the percentage. They were spread out quite a bit. So you have 4 areas of growth from our adult participants, which includes our staff. Continuing to help with socio-emotional needs. You remember that one was fairly high ranked in terms of an area of need by our students. Encouraging attendance, encouraging family involvement, also similar from the student respondents, and providing effective professional development. I will tell you that as part of our second year out of the pandemic, we put much of our pulling staff away from their jobs on pause because of the strong requests of our staff, and because we were, in many cases, short on subs for a number of months. There's a national trend in that regard. So I anticipate that next year, those seeking more effective professional development will see it as a strength and not an area of growth. As a new part of this year's Lcap survey, and this is preliminary data from the first time we collected it, we have to go back and tabulate the results. The survey had a number of segments. Our community has told us, these are adults, that they definitely want students to graduate with skills, lots of them. We gave a choice of selecting any of the skill sets that the adults in the community want our students to have, and I am pleased to tell you they want all of them. So that's positive. We will continue to work more and more toward incorporating technology skills, learning skills, life skills, and even career exploration. Each of these were in the lowest was a mid 85% of responses. So lots of desire to help move our schools in that direction. As a brief mention, part of the Lcap involves disclosure of the budget. So I wanted to just show you a slide that was presented by Tracy Vicar and our team from Business Services in helping to prepare it, showing where the various expenditures have gone aligned with the district's goals and with the actions and services provided. This board, this body, if you will, and the community would have seen that detailed presentation as part of the second interim budget report. However, I wanted to show you this slide taken directly from those presentations with our school teams and advisory groups so that you could see that we also spoke about the budget as part of the process. We are required this year as a new component of the Lcap and the accountabilities there to ensure that every child has access to the Universal Meals program. So in other words, if a student is qualified to receive the free or reduced priced breakfast or lunch program, that we make them aware of it. That program is pretty exciting in that it can help bring other opportunities to students. So this slide from Stacy Johnson, our Director of Food Services, is briefly explaining that every child who participates in a public school sponsored by a county office of education, those are usually schools for students with individualized education plans. Not always, but most of the time. And that students attending charter schools can qualify to receive those 2 free meals every school day, and that is as the new school year starts. Online applications will be available in the opening of the new fiscal year. So wanted to make sure that our community was aware of that. You may be wondering, what are the next steps for the Lcap? So essentially, we will bring this plan back to receive the trustees' consideration and hopefully approval on June 22nd. The plan will be reposted on the district as a draft until the Los Angeles County Office of Education reviews it a second time. We have followed their guidelines, given them the draft about 5 weeks ago so they could give us a first reading and some corrective feedback wherever necessary. If following their reading we have any additional revisions, we must make them by mid-October. So with that said, that is a brief overview of the local control and accountability plan, the entirety of which is posted on the district's website under board meetings for anyone in the community who would like to review it. And we welcome your comments or questions about it now.
Do either of you have any questions or comments at this time?
Thank you for the presentation.
Dr. Fernando? I do have, I do thank you for this executive summary of everything. I had the pleasure of reading the 63 pages of the plan that you sent to us, so I'm glad that that will be posted on the district website because there is actually quite a bit, and it's not hard. It's not complicated to read. It just is a lot of information. So I'm glad that will this presentation also be posted? Both handouts will be? Great. And then, just clarification, and this really doesn't necessarily have anything to do with LCAP, more federal, but since you brought it up in your second to last slide as far as the meals are concerned, it's my understanding that the federal free meals are going away after this school year. Is that correct?
I would say no, based on the expansion of the program, but Dr. DeLeon, you look like you may have a pulse on the policy landscape.
It looks like they're going to end up extending it.
Oh, good.
There's a lot of pressure to extend.
Okay, good. That's
We haven't had
correct.
the
That
final-
is good,
We
but,
haven't had
okay.
the final word yet, but it does look like that is going to go through.
Okay, all right. So, if that's the case, do families still go through filling out our paperwork through the registration process as far as the process of free and reduced lunches are concerned? And I think that's a really important point because you mentioned the other services that actually go along with that. Could you talk a little bit about what that supplemental fund looks like as far as free and reduced, what that means in the grand scheme of things?
I would gladly. So on a very practical student by student level, if somebody qualifies for the federal meal program, they can also qualify for free college application or waived college application fees, for waived SAT or ACT fees. They can qualify in some districts for other benefits. The complicated part of it, really humanly speaking, is sometimes families want to hide their income or keep that very, very private. It's one of the most private sets of data that we have, along with someone's health or medical information, which only a very few people have access to. However, in terms of the benefits to the individual student and the expansion of opportunities it can provide for them, it's great and worth considering. It's also important to note that in districts where we want to see more funding come in, because that generally means that we can do even more to provide opportunities and advantages for our students. If we find that we have more students living in that unduplicated pupil group of socioeconomically disadvantaged or living below the federal poverty line, as I like to call it, then the district receives more revenue and more accountability for ensuring that all of our students have those opportunities and advantages. So we'll be working with the food services department and with our colleagues and friends in business services to help get the word out. Once we get the word out, it's a very confidential process, and Stacy Johnson in food services is probably the best contact to guide anybody who needs more information through the process.
I think it's also important to remember that on the same exact topic, when we did our direct certification last year, we did see a significant rise in the percentage of students who are below the federal poverty level from 28% to over 42.5 is what it ended up being. That's a huge jump. That worries me because it means that there are essentially families out there that need our help. And so another piece of this process of reporting is it alerts us to be able to help families with resources that they need.
That's exactly
Not right. There's so many more services that come from this particular reporting, and it's completely, it's confidential, and so it's just really important that folks do to answer those surveys and put that information in there. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Well, thank you for your attention to this very important topic and clicking assistance. Thank you for your help as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelson. Now that we've had that presentation and the opportunity for board members to ask questions, we'll now open the public hearing for the Local Control Accountability Plan and California Dashboard Local Indicator. This means that anybody that might have public comments specific to the Local Control and Accountability Plan may make public comment at this time. Would anybody like to make a public comment regarding this LCAP presentation? Would any board member like to make a comment about this LCAP presentation? No. The public hearing is now closed. Okay, we're going to move on to the 2021-2022 estimated actuals and the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget. Mrs. Vicar, Mrs. Walzak, you're up.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am really excited about being here this evening and getting to this presentation with our executive director, Ms. Walzak. It was about a year ago that I was actually sitting out in the boardroom, and I actually got to watch that budget presentation that was done by the former CBO that was here and by Ms. Walzak. And I just can't tell you how excited I am about being here this evening and looking at what the future and forecast looks like for the Glendora Unified School District. So with that, I'm going to turn the first part over to Ms. Walzak.
Thank you, Mrs. Backer. Good evening, esteemed board members, Dr. De Leon, cabinet members, and community. Again, it's that time of the year where we have to pass the budget by June 30th, so we just want to talk to you a little bit about what's included. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay, so what's included in the budget? So we've included the 21-22 estimated actuals for all funds. That's including the general fund, adult education fund, cafeteria fund, and so on and so forth. We've also included here the 22-23 budget for all funds, and then the multi-year projection for only the general fund, which is for 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25. As I mentioned, the final budget is due to the state by June 30th, and then we base our budget based on the governor's May revise, and the state is supposed to pass their budget on Wednesday, so we'll see how that goes. Based on what they pass and what's in that information, we may have to revise some of our numbers. And the budget will be revised throughout the year. We have the first interim, the second interim, and then also other minor adjustments that we make throughout the year. Our 21-22 estimated actuals is basically what we think would be our unaudited actuals. Once we close out the books by August and present the unaudited actuals in September, we'll be able to have a better idea based on any carryovers or any expenditures and revenues that we have to accrue. For the estimated actuals, we looked at the LCFF, so we go with what LACO has published. So based on that information, the difference is immaterial, so we did not record any adjustments. However, when we close out the books, we'll see if the adjustments will be material enough to make during the closing of the books. We also looked at the categorical programs, where we at as far as spending, as far as any revenues. And then, of course, we looked at the different expenditure accounts. For example, if we budget something in the year and we know it's not going to happen, then we basically take that out of the budget. Same with the revenue accounts. And looking at the general fund, so we at second interim we estimated that net income would be 6.5 million. After some of the adjustments for estimated actuals, it's now 2.7. The change is about 3.7 million. And then as far as the ending fund balance, we have a total of the restricted fund balance of 7 million. That's a little higher than usual just because of some of our restricted funds that will be spent down the following year. And then our assigned is 15.5, making it the total be 22.2. And now I'll turn it over to Mrs. Backer to talk a little bit about the 22-23 budget that we use for GUSD.
Thank you. So as Jeanette's been building our budget for us, I just want you to know there's like 5,000 lines that she's been working on this budget. It's an incredible task, and I really want to thank her for all of her work. She has really been extraordinary in really looking at how we can maximize and how we can actually leverage with what we know about today based on the governor's budget. So let's talk a little about the May proposal that's happened here for May revision. So we actually saw a COLA increase. Originally it was 5.33%, and we saw a 1.233% increase, which gave us 6.56 on our budget. Additionally, the governor proposed an additional $2.1 billion in ongoing funds to K-12 education. That's a good thing, but it doesn't all come to Glendora, right? And then with that, they actually look at our share based on, how many students we're serving, and what our ADA is, and the different formulas that we can choose from, and I'll explain that to you in just a moment. As we look at the proposition for general fund increase to the LCFF funding, this is applied throughout all the existing formulas. And then we proposed a one-time $8 billion of discretionary block grant for LEAs for the 22-23, and that's great. But let me remind you also that we don't receive very much in concentration supplemental funds as well. So we don't maybe see as much as some of our other surrounding districts that actually have access to some of those block funds that actually make their apportionment even higher. And then that's approximately $9 million not included in the proposed budget. So those are some things just to kind of think about. Additionally, as mentioned earlier, and I was really glad that our students came and spoke up, because they're right, their teachers are really, really an important part of their education, but it's also an important part of who we actually serve too, and making sure that we have a balanced budget, that we can keep the big ship afloat. And there's something called the ADA cliff, and that's really because of our declining enrollment and what's happening, right? It has a dramatic impact on what's happening to us, and it's been going on, as was explained earlier by Dr. DeGrazia, about it's more than 10 years that we've been declining enrollment, and really we just kind of started addressing it most recently. The board's had to make some very difficult decisions over the last few years, but you've made some good decisions that have dramatically helped us be able to bring together a very good budget for this coming year, and then looking at the projections for the next 2 years out. Those decisions made because of attrition, and looking at how we save money through attrition, and whether or not we really need to have that position come back, or is there somebody else on our district team that's an amazing educator that we can shift into one of those much needed positions somewhere else within our district, is extremely important. And one of the things that really made me feel good is that the students vouched for how wonderful their teachers are. And I think that's really an important piece to remember, that if we can use them in another location and have that talent to be able to help and support us, that's a great kudo to their ability to be able to help and support students, but making sure that other students that need a teacher is getting a really great quality teacher. So looking at that, we look at our current year. So we've got 3 things that we can look at for funding, and we get to choose the greater of the thing right now based on the current budget from the governor. So you can either look at your current year ADA, you can look at your prior year ADA, or you can do a computed average of ADA using the prior 3 years ADA. We chose to do that, and here's why. Over the last 3 years, since we've had some decline, we actually had a higher apportionment that we can actually leverage to help us with our budget coming up for this year. So that's really important to do. Our proposed budget and multi-year projections are using that computed average method. And should the formula go back and revert back to what we have to use prior to the pandemic, it would be almost $7.5 million that we would lose in funding. $7.5 million. That's a serious number. It actually has a dramatic impact on how we could do our delivery of services for next school year and for the ongoing 2 years after that. All right, let's go ahead and on to the next piece on revenues. Are you doing a slide for that? On revenues? Okay, so a little bit about revenues, things that we're looking at within our LCFF for the 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25. We're going to be looking at our cost of living adjustments of being 6.56% for this coming year. 5.38 is projected in the future, and 4.02 for the 24-25. The LCFF funded COLA looks the same, and then there's an unduplicated 3% average, and those are also listed there. And then specifically, Glendora gets dollars based on our grade limits, and it looks a little different depending on whether it's K3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12. For a funded ADA. Earlier I know we had, a gentleman that came up and he asked about fences There are fences in the budget. It's not to the tune of the 1.2 million. That would be for the ornamental fencing. We may be looking at something different, but something that would also add that additional security immediately and something that we could afford to be able to put up. And maybe in time, maybe we'll have that ornamental fencing, should we ever get a bond maybe passed here in the future that would help pay for something so high. But I think there's things that we can do. We've made safety a priority in this budget, just so you know. All right, looking at revenues. Additionally, we've got the categorical revenues for federal and state and categorical, and then special education for SELPA. As you well know, our SELPA is underfunded. It actually encroaches upon the general fund. I really don't like using that word because really there are kids, and the support systems that we do is to be able to provide the educational services that they need. But we need to be, how we use the money and how we can leverage that money with the services that are there will really come from our director, who's really super amazing. He's looking at some great things to be able to help and support our students with bringing some of our kiddos back, right? So they're gonna be right here locally and be able to receive the support systems right here. We also have lottery money. The unrestricted lottery for all 3 years is $163, and the restricted is $65. We have a mandated block grant, and you can see the funds that are up there for that, and they're approximately $151,000. And that's for grades K through 8. For 9 through 12, it's $146,870 for a total of $305,319 in our block grant. So those are really important revenues for us to be able to use. Additionally, we've got the CalSTRS and CalPERS. As you know, these retirement rates have increased, and they continue to go up, right? This was not something that was funded inside the governor's proposal. So this is something that's actually coming out of our operating expenditures to be able to pay for that difference. Although we knew some of what we were paying for, those increases are elements that we have to cover. And then looking at those for the 23-24 and 24-25. It'll be interesting to see how CalSTRS and CalPERS does on their investments and whether or not those increases will dramatically change over the next couple of years. Just like everyone else, if you've got investments, you're probably not seeing huge gains like you saw in the past years. So it's likely in 23-24 and 24-25, we might see some other adjustments to that column that we currently don't know about. For unemployment insurance and rates, those are also listed there. You're also actually going to see a little bit higher unemployment insurance. As you know, there were a lot of people in the state due to COVID that had to go on unemployment, and we're paying a share of that cost across the board, and we'll continue to monitor that. Hopefully people will be back to work, and those unemployment rates will continue to plummet down and actually become more affordable for all districts. We've got supplies and services that are there, and those projections have come with it. And then we've got our routine restricted maintenance of 3% that comes out of our general fund for maintenance and operations. As you well know, there's a lot of expenditures that comes with our maintenance efforts here in this district. It's an aging district, and so it's got a lot of challenges with equipment that it has aged, and is also very difficult now to even get some of the supply sources to be able to repair it. So some of it's actually requiring full replacement. And really without a bond, we're making sure that we leverage and that we prioritize some of the areas. And some of those have to do around security systems that we're looking at, and then also around our air conditioning systems for additional circulation that's happening. Those are probably the two biggest things that we're really paying attention to. And then the aging facilities that just through just basic age, whether it be, I know we talked about the track, we've talked about the wrestling room, talked about the pool, for some other facility needs that are some of the bigger ticket items that are sitting out there in addition to the overall condition of airflow.
Thank you, Mrs. Becker. Sure. So we can do it together. So for our budgets, for the revenues, we use the method 3 of the LCFF budget run, which is basically the computed average ADA. We've included the special education funding based on the SELPA projection. And then we've also included some new categoricals, which is the Expanded Learning Opportunity Program, which is separate from the ELO grant related to COVID-19. And then we also received the Educator Effectiveness Grant. And then as far as COLAs are applied in our budget. For expenditures, we've included the step and column adjustments in salaries for both certificated, classified, and management. And then we also the increases in STIRS and PERS. So last year STIRS was 16.92, and then this year it went to 19.1, which is an increase of 2.18%. And then PERS is going from 22.91% to 25.37%, which is an increase of 2.46. We've also included a textbook adoption for $2.5 million for 2022-23. And then we also have to still spend some of our COVID funds, including the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, and those are due. ESSER 2 has to be spent down by 9/30/23, and then ESSER 3 is 9/30/24. However, they're now allowing us to get an extension for ESSER 3 just because a lot of the school districts, such as ourselves, were using it, for example, for HVAC type of things, and that's taking a little bit longer. So then we could get an extension for ESSER, for those funds to be spent down. As far as our general fund balance for 22-23, we have 15.5, 23-24, 16.2, and then 21.4. Again, I just want to reiterate that our budget is based on the average method. Once the governor comes out, or the legislature approves it or whatever, we'll know more if we get to keep that budget or if we have to make revisions, because now we would have to use the prior year ADA. So if we're looking at the prior year ADA, if we're going to be funded for 22-23 based on the 21-22, that's 6,200 in ADA that we're looking at, versus this year with the 3-year average, it's 6,669. So it's a big difference, and that's why we're saying something in the range of about 7 million.
So we're not sure if that 3-year average is going to be?
We don't know that yet.
Will we know tomorrow?
Well, we should know by Wednesday, but
Okay.
LACO has advised us to just go ahead. That's why they redid the calculator. So we went off of what they
Their recommendation.
feel, what we could still use. So then we went with what LACO's advice to go ahead and use the 3-year the method average. However, it could change, so we just have to be prepared.
Now is a great time to get a hold of your legislator and let them know how important it is for us to have that leverage of being able to use the 3 years. It really is a piece, and I know it was mentioned earlier, there's about 71 to 75% of our districts are in declining enrollment. Using this 3-year average definitely helps them. But really, the legislature could make a decision for those districts that are having increased growth to be able to let them also choose another method. So, and again, that's, less than 30% that, is actually in that situation. The majority of our school districts are in declining enrollment, and not all of them have had the great stewardship of thinking about what they need to do through attrition the way how this board has. And so I think we're in a much better place than some other folks to be able to do that, but it will be a draconian cut to us if we had to go back to the old funding formula versus being able to use that 3-year average.
And we have no idea what they are thinking about as far as that 3-year average, if that will just continue to roll, or if there will be the cliff 1 year later. Like, are they just giving us this 3-year average as sort of a little bit of a COVID ease out? I mean, whatever.
Yeah, most of
We don't even know what's gonna happen this week, let alone what's gonna happen next year.
Other
We
than
got
they
a
do-
highlight though today. We did get a little highlight. They did pass SB 154, which passed the budget, but it did not address any of the details of any school funding, leaving it open for more negotiations to happen before June 30th.
Oh, yippee.
So they were silent on all of the education funding. So it didn't give us much.
Not
Didn't give us
much.
the answers we wanted, for
No.
sure. It means it's gonna keep going.
Yeah, 2 things will happen. If we, obviously you're gonna come back. I don't know that we would be completely able to go off and make all the adjustments. If we had to go back to a different funding formula, we'd be coming back 45 days later, really, and making those drastic cuts, right, which we really don't want to do. I think they're going to have to sit there and look at. There's going to be a lot of districts that are going to be fighting to be able to have that computation. And even in the multi-year projection budget that the governor looked at, it actually already addressed using that computation over the next 3 years. So to me, I think it was kind of sitting there. I think that it really is the intention. Is how we're actually projecting at our multiple year projection over the next 3 years is by using that. From everything that we've been able to see, that looked like it would be something that we would be able to leverage for the next 3 years to get us over that hurdle. That's actually a good thing. It actually leads us up to the year 2025, which is an important year here because that's really when the pre-TK comes in, right? And so then we actually have a new grade level that's starting. And so that's going to actually help us bring in some kids, right, and be able to help do some additional services to keep our ADA steady. Other questions?
Well, while you're on the topic of TK, I noticed that the budget appropriately builds up some reserve amount for TK implementation. Do you have any idea what it will cost to implement TK, universal TK?
A lot more than that. So we just know that we're not on one of the early rounds of funding for facilities, but we know that we need to make sure that our facilities are ready. So we've gone ahead and carved out some additional money. We'd love to think that conversation is going to change, but really we're not a concentration supplemental district. So since we're not receiving those additional LCFF dollars, it actually puts us into a category further out. At this point, it looks like at best we might not see funding until either 24 or 25. And that's just really too long for us to wait for us to be able to make those changes to the facilities in order to make sure that we have the right kinds of classrooms, the right kind of furniture, the right kinds of little small potties that need to be there for our littles. And so we decided that it would be wise to go off and invest some money up front, knowing that later on some monies might come in and we'll be able to help offset that with some other facility projects that we're going to do.
You mentioned concentration and supplemental grants, which are based on unduplicated pupil counts. In the slides you presented, it indicated that our percentage was somewhat jumping. Did I see that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. So as
From
far
like 38%?
Yeah, so we went from
45?
3-year average of about 39 to, prior to that, it was about 33. So for this year, since 21, 22, it's a little bit higher because of direct certification. So then our 3-year average for 22, 23 increased to 39%, and then moving forward it jumps up to the 42 and 45. So we are getting supplemental funding, and it's increased by about a little over $1 million. It used to be like 3 point something, so we're closer to about $5 billion in supplemental grants. But as far as concentration grant, we still don't. Yeah.
That's 55%, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you're talking about a 3-year average, have we always done a 3-year average to determine our unduplicated pupil count?
For funding purposes, LCFF, they've always done it the 3-year average.
So I guess it's just, why is there such a jump? Are we getting an increased number of students that qualify as unduplicated pupils?
Yes.
How are we able to do that? I mean, we want to, back to what you said, Dr. DeLeon, before, it's important that families report accurately their information for a lot of different things that we're seeing here. Is it some sort of a campaign to get students and families to more accurately report, or?
Do you want to speak?
Oh.
Please.
So the direct certification, that's basically done outside of GUSD. So whether or not that's through the, what do you call it? Another government entity where they go in and do all that stuff, and that's where the direct certification comes from.
Something like that. Sorry, the child spot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure. It could be something like unemployment, right? If we've had an increase in unemployment rates,
That
right?
makes sense.
So then parents, need some additional assistance with some other kinds of programs that might be out there. They may have put in to be able to qualify for some of those programs that would give them some additional aid, which would then, then have a change in what we're doing here. Would that kind of help you maybe understand?
Is that new?
Yeah.
Are other government entities sharing that data with us a new practice?
No, it's actually it's always been, so CalPADS actually collects this data on a variety of different programs, and then it actually intersects in based on a zip code, right?
Okay.
So it all kind of comes together. It's not something that we can sit there and say, hey, let's send, 100 more parents down this way to go get this service. You can't really do it that way. I mean, it really is very specific around service elements, A lot of my career was spent, looking at, various programs that they would have to qualify, and a lot of times you have to bring lots of evidence, right? So that's the other thing, it's incumbent upon whoever's qualifying for those benefits to be able to bring evidence that they do meet those qualifications, and that they actually live in the zip code that they're qualifying under.
So could I add one comment, since you're talking about zip codes? I often get asked when people find that we have gone from 28% to 42.5 now, I believe, which was the last final, right? They often ask me, is that all district of choice kids, or those kids are on inters coming from other districts? The direct certification are Glendora zip codes only. So the 42.5 is only our zip codes. This is not district of choice. This is not students that are on inters from other districts at all.
It is relevant at this point in time just because people really do have a perception that way. How many district of choice students do we have in the entire district right now, Dr. DeLeon?
At last counted, it was around 80-something. We're low because once you hit your apex, the most you can take from a district, you can never have another student, not even to replace a student who graduates or leaves.
So 80 of around 6,000 students.
It's not, district of choice is almost gone because once they graduate, you can't keep replacing them. We don't have many.
That's like less than 2%.
It's not many.
We used to have like 20% district of choice.
Because once
Remember that, Ms. Walzak? It was like, yeah.
So I think this is something that the public needs to be aware of, because I think there's still this perception in parts of the community, not all parts of the community, that we are a heavily district of choice district. Not that I have any concerns with that, because our district of choice students have brought incredible contributions to our community, but that the numbers are so significantly lower than they were. So I think that's an important message to stress.
Well, and on ADA, that provision to allow a 3-year average could save districts like ours from
Absolutely.
drastic cuts. And I noticed that by 24-25, projected ADA and funded ADA is getting very, very close to similar. And that makes me feel a lot better, because it means a cliff is not necessarily a cliff. It's more of a gradual decline to where you're funded almost on what your actual ADA is for that year, which for us it's been, there's been a discrepancy in those numbers for a while. We've used the funding ADA and to be, I mean, if you look over here at 21-22, projected ADA is 6,200, but funded ADA is 6,900, 700 students. That's a lot.
Yes, because for the last 3 years, we've been funded based on our actual 18 and 19 ADA, which was roughly 6,900. And so we're using 6,900 for the third prior year, 6,900 for the second prior year, and the first prior year is roughly 6,200, which is our actual ADA for the 21-22 P2.
Yeah, it's just nice to see that gap closing, because that represents a cliff when you have numbers that are that different. And not switching from cliffs to ceilings, it's surprising. I can't believe that I'm actually seeing the point where our STRS and PERS contributions aren't dramatically increasing year over year. I mean, there was that plan so many years ago of how much they were going to increase us every year to bring us up to that scary number. Well, we're there, right, at that 19%, where it's sort of holding steady for STRS.
But I think things like I said, you need to really take a look at what those investments will look like for STRS and PERS moving forward, whether or not they're going to be able to maximize out their investments. Also, I think one of the other changes that's out there that I think that people really haven't considered, and I don't know how much the STRS and PERS board has considered, and that's all the additional time that's been given to people in the public service sectors that are in either PERS or STRS, because their incomes have somewhat increased because of COVID and the additional services that we've been able to provide. So like if you think, let's just use law enforcement, and just, the fact that law enforcement has gone dramatically up, right? Because there's additional overtime that's needed to be able to help support it. You've had people that have been out sick on COVID and other officers coming back in, right? So that's dramatically changing their overall income just because of all the OT that's happened, right? And those were not numbers that they considered originally when they first did all these projections. So I'll be curious to see where STRS and PERS lands as they start looking at how those actuaries moving forward has a incredible increase to those two systems, because incomes have actually risen pretty dramatically in certain areas where we've never really seen those kinds of increases, but it's been because of OT that's been given in some sectors, right? So, and then we also share in that contribution, so, you know, when you look at the percentages, it'll just be curious to see what happens, and it's one to really pay close attention to and really monitor their monthly reports that they give, and pay attention as to what they're looking at in their actuaries as to whether or not we're gonna see, and again, another rise that will have to happen in order to be able to cover those increased salaries that have happened from these past couple of years. Their salaries are actually gonna probably lower overall, because they're not gonna see as much OT that they saw in the past. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in a couple of our sectors and how that evens out and the effect that will have across the board for STRS and PERS along with their investments.
And lastly, I'll appreciate you mentioning that there's money being held in reserves for safety and perhaps fencing. It's important, and maybe I should have given this feedback during the Lcap presentation, so please allow that to serve for both. But if there is anything that we're thinking of doing in terms of safety and security, my recommendation is we just kind of accelerate that in our Lcap and in our priorities, that we can do that. And I want Glendora Unified to always be able to say we're doing everything that we can to keep our students and staff safe every single day. And if there's a can that we can't kick down the road, it's that one. I mean, we've talked about it. I'm very proud that our elementary schools have been fully secure with, you know, defined ingress and egress points where you have to check in, and systems like the Raptor, which, you know, scan IDs and make sure everyone who's on campus is authorized and allowed to be on campus, and the developments we've had with staff and visitors wearing badges to be identified. But it's always bothered me that our middle schools, the entire back is wide open. And I know that we have agreements with the city of Glendora for those to be used as parks during designated times, which are after school, and want to continue to do that. But during school hours, that's always been just a glaring safety oversight. Like, how do we have that? How do we allow that to happen? And there have been incidents reported to us by our middle school principals of adults being on campus in unauthorized hours, and even Sandburg often choosing not to use third level because of the amount of public that's using it during school hours. So, you know, fencing of Glendora High School is a completely different conversation that, you know, that the safety committee can engage in and consider with the cost and safety consultants to know whether or not that is the safest thing we can do for students and staff. But the middle schools at a minimum, I mean, and our front classrooms too, that are facing the street, it just seems like something we should be addressing sooner rather than later. I don't know if my colleagues have comments on that, but that's something that I would encourage both in the LCAP and in the budget and with our safety committee to accelerate if we can.
We added an additional line in there. We also have some safety money that has been set aside to be able to assist with future cameras and some other safety devices. So we've got that. We actually have to do some match that goes along with that. Those have all been allocated for, and then additionally, we added money in for the next 3 years to be able to help with fencing. And some of that, I think, will also be leveraged. I expect to see some additional grants coming out of the governor's office for safety. I don't think it'll be federal funding that comes. I think it'll be our state. I think they are concerned, especially in light of, you know, the most recent things that have happened. I think we're all very, very concerned. As many of you know, we added additional security for our big events that came up. We want to make sure that everybody's safe too, and it's a high priority in ours, and we actually added an additional line item this year that actually addresses that.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Dr. Fernando?
I think it'd be good just to, from a public understanding perspective, is to quantify in some way what $7.5 million would be. Right, because you're saying here that Glendora Unified would be losing approximately $7.5 million a year over 3 years. That's, you know, 21 million.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like for us as a district?
Like, how many teachers does that look like?
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
How many meals does that look like?
Right.
Yeah, I hear you.
And just speaking to the earlier comments that, you know, we don't want to make decisions based on budget. Well, budget also budget strategy is based on a set of values. And so as we look at this budget and the responsible measures you're taking, it's because you're embedded important people-centered values in the budget, right? So it's not and I realize these are students that are sharing their thoughts, which were well said, but
Very well
that
said.
nuance is important in terms of understanding that $7.5 million. So that's just a clear, I don't know, as you put this up on the website, this is what $7.5 million will mean for the community. Just a couple questions here. I see this loss of indirect costs of $221K over the next couple years. What is that?
What page are you on, sir?
This is on the multi-year projections.
Oh. Are you underneath
So
expenditures?
it's unrestricted, indirect costs.
So basically, the indirect cost is we're able to charge the different categorical programs an indirect cost, basically to pay back or for the administrative costs by the general fund. So,
Okay.
for example, it's decreased, it's going from 238 to 221 because of some of their programs. Per se, particularly for that year, the expenditures are not as much. So every year, the indirect cost changes. So last year, it was 4.76%. Prior to that, it was 3.99. And then 22-23 is 4.77%. So it just depends on the expenditures for those funds.
I see, okay. And remind me what the discretionary block grant is?
So the discretionary block grant, so basically it's a one-time, so there's certain things that districts are supposed to like mandated type things. So they allocate money for that. So we have the ones where we get roughly $300,000 every year. But during the May revised budget, the governor is saying that they're doing a one-time, block grant, which will equate to roughly $1,500 per ADA if that goes through on the trailer bill. So which will equate to roughly $9 million for GUSD. And with that one-time grant, so, obviously you want to spend it on one time and not ongoing type expenditures.
Okay. And I need some acronym help. ESSER. What is ESSER?
ESSER is the elementary and secondary school emergency relief.
Thank you.
COVID.
Thank you. Something else that you said that was. So again, this is something that community needs to know about. Mic is not on, sorry. So we are free and reduced lunch has increased by 27 to 42, correct? So because of that increase, and this is not just a question for the business office, what does that mean in terms of the kinds of grants we can apply for? Does that change any of the grant portfolio that we pursue because our population is different compared to what it was maybe last year?
Yeah, I think it definitely helps the conversation when you're writing a grant. You're writing that preamble to tell your story, right? So if you're able to sit there and talk about how your community is changing in a grant, quite often that will speak oftentimes to what the grant's purpose is and who it's trying to serve. And so if you're able to show over multiple years that there's been a change, right, and we'd want to show a chart or a graph, something that would actually help change that conversation so people know who we are and that we're not just the Glendora that everybody used to know, but that we're changing a little bit. Of course, all of Southern California is changing, right? You're seeing multiple family housing coming in because regular housing is unaffordable. To be able to buy a home in this community, takes probably 2 incomes at least to be able to buy a home. I would imagine probably, even a beginning home here is probably upwards now north of $1 million to be able to purchase a home here in this community, which can be very taxing on, new residents coming in, young families moving in to have that kind of home. I mean, many of you, have friends that have, young adults, and to be able to buy that first time home, it would be very difficult to probably buy here in this particular community. So instead what they're going to do is they're going to rent, right? They might share their family's home. We're seeing a lot of add-on units that are coming in. So families are, becoming more multi-generational in their homes, and sharing those resources so that their families can stay and live nearby. So it's a really great point. Yes, I think we would be able to leverage that conversation and story when we're out there writing those grants. And that preamble will be really important to be able to share our story. Dr. Kelsey, anything else?
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think it helps us be eligible for more grants. So there are more and more grants now where you have to have a baseline to even put in your first application. And so for us, it really does improve the conversation. And really the end result is, and the reason those monies are up for application, is for districts in our situation who need resources to be able to provide the supports for students whose families are in this exact situation. And so to me, I always look at it as an opportunity, and you know that I've had a philosophy since I've been here of we apply for everything. I don't care. I don't care. Sky's the limit. If we can apply for it, we're applying. Even if we can't apply for it, we do. And sometimes it's on the second or third try that we get it. But for me, the important piece is any monies we can get. If it's $5, $10, or $100,000, it's resources for kids. And the reason that percentage is so important is because that tells a story about the kids and the kinds of supports they're going to need that's different than before. So when you're talking about shifting demographics, what you're talking about is shifting really essential needs for students in our classrooms. And also, to piggyback on Tracy's statement about the homes and multi-generational families living in one home now, you're looking at homeless numbers going up because of that. Because any student who lives with another family, if their parents don't have the lease for that home or aren't in the rental agreement, even if you technically have a roof over your head because you're staying with another family, you are homeless in terms of state definition. And so you get 2 or 3 families living in a home, technically they're homeless. That is increasing the number of students who qualify for homeless. And to us, that's important because there are needs that come with that. So in any case, so it's all of those things at once.
Okay, I want to thank my colleagues for all their excellent questions. I don't have any more, but now we're going to open up the public hearing in regards to the budget. The public hearing is now open for the 2021-2022 estimated actuals and the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget. Are there any public comments regarding this hearing? Okay. Any additional comments from members of the Board of Education? This public hearing is now closed. Okay. Okay.
Comments?
Okay, now we're on to comments from members of the Board of Education. Okay, Dr. Fernando.
Put me on the spot here. I just first want to thank all of the staff at Glendora High School for the excellent commencement ceremony that we had on Wednesday, and all the staff of Wickham High School for the excellent commencement that we had on Tuesday. Both are very unique, special events. It was wonderful to be together. Of course, back at Citrus, when we did it outside in the midst of the wind where people were nearly flying off their seats because it was so windy that day. But just the unique testimonies of how students' lives are impacted at Wickham, the kinds of attention they get, the ways that their life gets changed and shifted. I think the student testimonials this year were excellent. They were really impressive. And again, we're really impressed with our seniors at Glendora High School. Not because of the number of APs they take, but because there's a number of pathways that we're concerned about, that we're committed to seeing our students succeed, whether that be in the area of trade, career technical education, a 2-year degree, or a 4-year degree. All pathways for this board are pathways of success. Getting to a top 25 U.S. News and World Report college is one avenue of success. It is not the only avenue of success. And I will talk about this until I leave, because there's continuing to be a narrative at the high school that a 4-year prestigious college or university is Glendora's success. I thoroughly disagree with that. So for those students that are listening, probably not many because they're on vacation, but especially for those high school students that may not feel like they want to go to a top-tier school, if you choose a CTE pathway, this board views you as a success. If you go to Citrus, this board views you as a success. So I just want to reiterate that to you, the students, but also to the parents in this community, because it's so important that our students hear that there's different ways of success. The other thing I want to stress is that with this shifting demographic, with this shifting socioeconomic reality, the challenge but the opportunity for our teachers is that we have to teach differently. How do we create learner-centered environments in the classroom with the kinds of situations, the types of social, environmental, social behavioral issues that our students are dealing with, right? If you're seeing an increase of 27 to 42, that means students are coming to the classroom with more. And we can't teach like we did in 2019. I know it's very challenging. I know that our teachers are tired, and I'm hoping that they get rest this summer. But moving from 2022 onwards, pedagogy and instruction fundamentally has to change for this generation, which would be called the COVID generation. And I see people like Eric Osborne and others in the audience that are partnering with the city in this district to change the way that we care for all students. But if we see that shift that's occurring, at least on the SES level, that means as instructors, we have to fundamentally think, how do I teach this course differently, and how do I meet the assets that our kids are bringing in, as well as some of the challenges that they're bringing in. So this is where teaching is a lifelong profession. It's not a one and done thing. And I appreciate the district leadership and their commitment to that. But that is something that I think this board is also committed to as we move forward. And then finally, just want to thank the great work of the business team. It's such a pleasure about how the presentations have changed over the last, I would say, 2 years. They're clearer. It's a lot more, it's content, but it's not too much content. The numbers are clarified and explained. The implications of the numbers are clarified. And we get clear answers to the questions that we have. And that's a nice, pleasant change that I have experienced here since my early part of my tenure as board member. So thanks, Jeanette and Tracy, for the excellent work. And then finally, I know that many administrators, whether you are principal or an assistant superintendent or a superintendent or even teachers, the last couple weeks of the semester are grueling. I mean, these folks with me here, we're at almost every event. Well, we're at every event. So I just want to thank the ways that you all show up for our students at the multiple graduation ceremonies and things that go on. It's a very special moment for that student's life, and for your presence as a leader is important, even if the student doesn't 100% know what you do. So I just wanted to thank all of you for the hard work that has gone into this ending of this year, and I'll close with that.
Thank you, Mr. Ellenson. It's hard to follow him. Ms. Borg did send me some comments that she asked that I relay for you all. From joining the Whitcomb PTA Board, attending Sandburg History Day, Glendora Legislative Action Committee, joining students and teachers at Goddard for awards luncheon, handing out over 1,750 COVID tests over 2 afternoons, and volunteering at Sellers Gold Rush Days. It's been a pleasure to be able to attend before leaving for my grandson's high school graduation. My continued thanks and appreciation to all teachers and staff for working continuously towards student successes in another challenging year. Enjoy and renew during the summer break. I'd like to sort of piggyback my comments on Dr. Fernando's comments about celebrating different kinds of student success. Another celebration that I was able to attend, I always say every year that I love Whitcomb graduation because of the just sheer enthusiasm of the families and supporters that are there, and they are not shy about showing it. The awesomeness of Glendora High School's graduation, as far as 548 kids, I think, were graduated last week, and it really is quite a moving ceremony, and to hear from our valedictorians and ASB, the 8th grade promotion, all those different ceremonies. But I got to attend something that I've never attended before, and it may have been my favorite. It was the Glendora Resource and Education for Adult Transition graduation that was on Thursday evening. And so I want to make sure that I'm saying this correctly. After high school graduation, K-12 graduation, public schools in California educate young adults up to the age of 21 or 22? 22 years old. And so we have an adult transition program here at Glendora Unified. And this year there were 8 graduates of the program, 4 young men and 4 young ladies. And it was a pleasure to attend this ceremony. Mrs. Kirkendall and Mr. Ramiro, the adult transition specialists, clearly pour their heart, souls, and 100% of their energy, as I'm sure all the other staff members do, into preparing these adults to transition into the workforce in many different ways, life lessons, and maybe moving into different types of homes, etc. That we provide this transition program for these young adults, and the amount of care and love that are shown to these individuals was really a tremendous pleasure to be able to experience. I'm excited. I was very excited to introduce and meet Mr. Jones and Ms. Galindo this evening, and look forward to their joining our principal staff here in Glendora Unified. I do want to thank everyone that helped to grind it out the last couple of weeks, and it really did feel like it was a lot. My 2 kids at home, it felt like it was a lot this year, getting back into sort of the traditional final schedule, etc. I think it was a lot. So I wish our teachers, our staff, and all of our administrators hopefully some form of rest this summer. I think that's all for now. Thank you.
I know I'm. Right ahead. As if I could stop you now. Go ahead.
No, thank you, Trustee Reuter and board members. I do want to thank all of our staff and our trustees who came out to all of the events over the last 2 weeks, and just for this entire year. It has been a grueling, rough year coming back from the pandemic, and I think everybody's feeling it. But the rewards are many, plentiful. We see it in the kids' faces at all of these events, and it's been wonderful. And also, I want to thank my incredible staff who are here tonight and who have presented tonight, Dr. Kelson and the Lcap. The Lcap had about 85 revisions required by LACO. Like, they changed the template. They changed the template multiple times. They changed the requirements multiple times. I want to say, I don't know how many meetings you had, Dr. Kelson. So thank you for that. It was a lot of work. Thank you, Dr. DeGrazia, for your excellent staffing presentation and for all the hard work you're doing. Dr. DeGrazia has that unenviable position of having to work on some of these really hard decisions to transfer and things like that. And does an excellent job with folks. And so thank you, Dr. DeGrazia, for that. And then also to our business team, Tracy and Jeanette, for an excellent budget presentation tonight. Really great job. It was grueling, but they did it. And we're still not done because we still don't have the final, as we found out to be June 30th before the real final, right? And so there could be some adjustments again. We're going to cross our fingers, no. But a lot of really good work, and thank you for that. And then to everyone here, Mr. Osborne, Mrs. Spino, Evan, everybody, thank you so much. But primarily, I need to thank my assistant, Miss Cornelius, who's done so much for us all year and the end of the year, and she gets everything together. And I just have to tell you, she's been phenomenal. So I do want to thank all of you for everything, and it means so much to us in the district. And I'm going to say this one time. I say it all the time, but I'm going to say it again, that this district cannot function without any one person in this district. It's really, everybody is critical, everybody's job is critical and contributes to the overall success of our students. And I thank all of you. That's all. Sorry.
It was a good one. Okay, we're moving on to the discussion action items. Item 5.1, approve to file a declaration of.
I have a table. You're going to wait till I get there?
Yes.
Or you're going to do it at the beginning? Okay.
No, I was just going to go in order and let you do it then.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, approve to file a declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 2022-2023 school year as presented. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Dr. DeGrazia, can you tell us a little bit about this,
Sure,
please?
this is an annual process that allows us the flexibility, if need be, for certain credentials to be utilized when the employee holds another credential. So it allows them some flexibility if they have units or a specialty in a certain area. So it allows us to secure those people in that form.
Does anybody have any questions? All those in favor? Aye. No opposed. Motion passes. Item 5.2, approve the renewal of member district memorandum of understanding with Foothill Consortium Induction Program, FCIP, as presented.
Trustee Reuter, I'm going to ask that we table this to the next meeting. We are not quite ready with this particular item, and we got a little bit more work to do.
All right, moving on.
Thank you.
Move to table.
Second.
Thank you, Thank you. Item 5.3, review the revision of Board Policy 6146.1, high school graduation as presented for first reading and forward for second reading. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Kelson?
Yes, thank you. This is a board policy that specifically features the number of credits required in a particular subject. It also provides some provisions for the state's direction in terms of COVID and delays for degrees that were provided previously. The key reason that I am bringing this forward is that there has been a long-standing line in our policy about the number of credits a student can complete outside of Glendora High School, including the many alternative programs that are available. It's also significant to note that the manner in which courses taken with our Regional Occupational Program, or ROP, have been changed to reflect the accuracy, to reflect accurately how those course credits are earned. So an example, a few years ago, most regional occupational programs awarded a credit by hour, and maybe a decade or so ago, they went to the standard 5 or 10 credits that most other high school courses award credits by. So we've made those changes, and I would present this to you for your consideration as part of moving us forward.
Do either of you have any questions? While I think that both Trustee Borg and Merkley would support moving forward with just the first reading, maybe we should wait until they come back for the next meeting as far as the second reading is concerned. I do believe that they would, but let's let them speak for themselves. Is that okay?
That's fine.
So we don't have to do, there's no action taken, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then 5.4, review the revision of Board Policy 6146.2, Certificate of Proficiency / High School Equivalency, as presented for first reading and forward for second reading. So do we even need a motion?
No.
No, let's just, go ahead. Yeah?
You actually kind of do need to approve something as a first read, approve it,
Okay.
and then move it on for a second.
Okay. May I have a motion?
Well, going back then to discussion action item 5.3. We move this forward to second reading at the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
Okay. 5.4.
Same, I move that discussion action item 5.4 be moved forward for second reading at the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
Dr. Kelson.
Thank you. Key highlight of this change impacts students who earn a high school diploma through an exam, such as the high school proficiency or GED. This new policy allows students to receive a diploma from the service that provided the exam, for those who are doing this by exam. It also allows the district to help waive the fee for students in those unduplicated pupil groups mentioned in the Lcap presentation, such as students who are foster or students who are homeless.
Any questions at this time? Then we'll look forward to the second reading with all board members present. Item 5.5, recommendation, the Board of Education adopt resolution number 21/22-14, cash borrowing, approving temporary transfers from the school pools fund maintained by the Los Angeles County Treasurer. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Vacar.
Yeah. This consent is before you.
Do we have to do these individually?
Yes, these are discussion action. We'll get to the consent in a minute. Does anybody have any questions about the cash transfers?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Motion passes. Well,
We need to go back real quickly, I'm just checking.
okay. On.
To 5.3, you guys did the motions to move them to a second, but you didn't.
Do we need to vote, even though all it is, okay.
To move, yeah.
Okay,
to move.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Same for 5.4.
Three unanimously passed, 5.3. 5.4, all those in favor? Aye. Unanimously passed, 5.4.
good.
Thank you for keeping us on the level there, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
5.5.
5.5.
Yeah, for the cash borrowing, now you need to vote. You did that, right?
I thought we just did.
You got a motion?
You did the motions, but you didn't.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, unanimously passed.
Thank you.
Okay, now, moving on to 5.6. Recommendation, the Board of Education adopt resolution number 21/22-15, authorization for cash transfers between funds for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Vacar?
Yes. This item will allow the Business Services Department to move cash within our own funds to
Okay.
be able to maximize and leverage as funding becomes available. As you know, we receive revenues at certain times of the year, so sometimes in order to be able to make payroll, this is an important little shift to be able to make.
Great. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Motion passes. 5.7, recommendation, the Board of Education adopt resolution number 21/22-16, approving annual delegation of administrative authority to process routine budget revision, adjustments, and transfers for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Vacar?
This is a really fun item for Mrs. Walzak in particular, because
Oh.
she gets to do a lot of this work. It comes back to you in the form of how we do our first and second interim reports, how we look at our final budget for the year and how everything turned out. It basically allows her to make those adjustments so that she can come and bring back a very detailed report to all of you for review and final authorization.
That's very clear. Any questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed, motion passes. Okay, finally, 5.8, recommendation, the Board of Education adopt resolution number 21/22-17, approve temporary interfund cash borrowing during the fiscal year 2022-2023. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Vacar.
This is another one of those wonderful mechanisms that allows us to be able to leverage funds for us to be able to use cash borrowing with certain accounts.
Okay, any questions?
And those accounts are identified in the resolution.
Okay, great. Any questions? Okay, these are all standard operating procedure every year. Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Motion carries. We now move on to our consent items. The Board of Education may consider agenda consent items as a whole or as individual divisions. Any item may be removed by a member of the board for discussion and possible action. Would anybody like to pool any consent items this evening? If not, may I please have a motion for a blanket approval?
Blanket. So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. No opposed. We will unanimously pass all consent items. We've now reached the time of the evening where we adjourn the meeting. I would like to do so this evening in honor of Flag Day tomorrow. June 14th is Flag Day.
Yeah, okay.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned at 9:07 PM.